This is the Afro Perspective Podcast, the home of over-opinionated young voices.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th edition of the Afro Perspective Podcast. I am your host, Tinashe, alongside my co-host, Asha to my left, Zoya to my right, and Anton to my right, and we are joined via Skype by a special guest from Peterborough. Her name is Paige. So, Paige, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Paige from Peterborough, 27. Bye, we'll get into the rest.
Okay, I've seen on your Facebook you've been doing quite a bit to do with the Black Lives Matter. Do you want to put us up to speed with what you're involved with over in Peterborough?
Yeah, of course. So I was one of 4 people. We organised the first protest on the 6th of June. Got around 1,500 people there, I think. And then we organised a second protest, a Saturday just gone, in regards to a video that we saw in London with a similar obviously incident, but with British officers. So we organised that. That got quite a good turnout on that as well. I'm trying to be part of get into the council a bit more within Peterborough as well, because there's a lot of issues, systematic issues within our own council that don't really get spoken about. We've got no representation, so we're just trying our hardest basically to infiltrate in the most sort of like respectful way, but not at the same time in the most loudest way we can, but in the most, you know what I mean, like. So yeah, it's
not breaking the law.
basically.
Yeah.
So have you got quite a lot of youth involved in this?
Yeah, to be honest, the majority of us are 30 and under, and at the minute we are trying to focus obviously on the youth, because in our sort of heads it's them that we've got to target now. We're going to stop obviously what's happening sort of in the future. Like, there's no use trying to stop the people that are already in power now, do you know what I mean, and the institutions they're already set. So for us it's the youth, and to make sure the youth continue to have the sort of same knowledge that we've got and the same discussions and an open platform like what we're doing now, basically, to keep this sort of going, so we all can have a much more sort of understanding and compassion when it comes to people in general. Do you know what I mean? Just people as humans, and stop the whole 4 reasons and all the money and politics to go within it. So just start from young, and I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of us that are involved at the minute, so it's good.
Okay, that sounds very positive.
Yeah, it does. I like it. I like the move she's making.
It's good to hear Peterborough's playing up with that kind of trust.
I'm proud right now. One of the only times I hold up Peterborough.
Okay.
No, we need it, because people got the nothing, it's not nothing.
Okay, so
do you want to do hot topics?
Oh yeah.
Before we get started.
Sorry?
Do you want to do hot topics before we get started?
What's on the hot topics?
Right, so the hot topic this week
Same
is...
thing.
Oh yeah, by the way, so Paige, we've got our agenda, but we've got a thing where we kind of discuss certain hot topics
What's
or anything that's
happening in current affairs.
Oh yeah, I love
so-
it. Yeah.
Alright, so we usually have, so this week, literally today, I suppose, it's got to be none other than Wiley, and he's literally, the fact that how quickly this guy has got banned off social media, literally across multiple platforms on the basis of his, you know, on the basis of him technically being anti-Semitic.
I just find it crazy that the last hot topic was...
I know.
The last hot topic was about Nick Cannon.
The exact same issue, basically.
And he got into trouble for the same thing, like perceived anti-Semitic
literally
comments.
Yes.
And he pretty much said it said the same things that Wiley's kind of gotten into trouble for.
I almost feel more sorry for Wiley than I do even for Nick Cannon, because I went back through some of the stuff that he said.
See, I didn't see half his tweets that he...
Wiley said, I want to talk to a Jewish... I want to talk to the head man's in charge right now and have a conversation about how things are going. Now I'm like, what is wrong with that statement?
Yeah, but have you seen the big hoo-ha that they've made about it?
Yes.
Like, apparently, police are investigating the tweet. I'm like,
it's crazy.
Unnecessarily deep.
is it really that deep?
You know why it
It's not that
is?
deep.
I feel like, do you know what it is? Because, like, to go obviously back to even just the BLM stuff in general, like, I feel like a lot of people need to remember that when you're a public speaker, it seems to only be you can speak down, and you can almost get away with not necessarily lose your job if it was a black sort of comment, a racial comment in that sense. But any other comment,
Yes.
they're
Any
hard
other
to
comment,
get
like-
for you. And the thing is, what obviously was saying, there was obviously truth to it in the sense when we talk about ownerships and stuff like that when it comes to the media. So of course,
facts. Yes.
Yeah, but why did they get so? Why did they
Why
get so
are
riled
you
up?
gonna? Yeah. Why are you gonna be so offended if I say that a particular group of people own a media, like network, or have a monopoly on something? Why is that deemed as anti-Semitic or offensive? Especially if it can be measured.
It's like, let it be a fact, but let it be known.
I only assume that there's this.
I don't understand though.
I think the correlation with
Trying to get me shut
anti-Semitism
down.
and the whole issue about ownership, i.e. Jews owning the media, etc.
And record companies.
I think it has something to do with the fact that that's one of the reasons, or one of the major reasons, the Nazis exterminated the Jews, or the reasons that were cited.
That was cited, yes. Yeah. So then whenever you say anything like that, it sounds anti-Semitic immediately. Yeah, I think you've got it. Yeah, I was wondering where you were going with that. I was about to start sweating. Stage left. But yeah, I agree with you 100% on that statement. I just think it's unfortunate if you see people, there's been racial slurs for a very long time about different groups of people, and I think that he hasn't said anything that I thought was majorly offensive, so therefore why have you silenced him so quickly? Like, it shows you that there is the power to silence people if
you've got the power,
if you have the power to silence them.
cancel culture.
Yeah, literally. But when it comes to black people, it doesn't matter.
Now, alright, do you know what, yeah? I have to, we have to take accountability as a people, right?
I know you're going. Go on.
Jewish people make sure that there's economic consequence.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is because they have an economic structure.
Yeah.
Whereas
The fact that we don't have an economic structure, you can say what you want to say about black people. There is no economic consequence, and more so, there's no political consequence to it because we do not have.
He's right.
Power. We don't yield any form of
we
power.
don't have a word.
Yeah,
We've tried to have power.
I agree.
We've tried, but
tried,
the
that's
point
how
is-
you think.
Let's go.
Yes, we've tried to have power. Black people have tried to, like we spoke about it last time. Tulsa or Tulsa?
Tulsa, yeah.
Tulsa, and I think there was one in Central Park as well, where black communities have come together. They've had their own stuff, their own banks, their own businesses, everything, and literally got bombed.
When I found out about Central Park, I almost cried.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Central Park used to be a place where black people were,
Literally,
and they bombed it and put a park in there and said, it's like, come on. So I do understand what you mean.
It's not a case of us doing it to
I still
ourselves.
think, I agree, but I think we need to be smarter economically. So we need
Smarter
to infiltrate economically
Economically,
to a point where they're not able to do that.
Agreed.
Yeah,
I agree.
going forward. Anyway, that got a bit heated. But it's just my take on it. I don't think he should be banned or silenced
No,
for wanting to have a conversation, because it wasn't even like he was like burn all people or whatever. He literally said, I want to sit down with the main guys and let's converse about the scenario, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I understand is they never actually explain
what it means, why it's
the
offensive.
issue is. It's like, have you read the tweets?
I read the tweet, and obviously I
Go
cannot
on.
confirm or deny if I agree with him. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying to you is, my biggest problem, whether he was wrong or right or offended people, my biggest problem when it comes to it is obviously it all boils down to who he is and what he's doing, why he got banned so quickly. Someone like Kay Hopkins or Tommy Robinson, who have been spouting hatred on all minorities. I'm talking sexuality,
in the burqa.
she's been doing this. She's been dressing like openly, vocally, like slating all different kinds of minorities for years. On Twitter was her biggest platform.
Yeah,
She only got cancelled recently on that.
Yeah, but check the joke. They've apologized for not responding quick enough, for not getting rid of Wiley quick enough.
Yep.
This is like,
less than 7 days ago, this guy said it.
literally, I caught wind of it like on the weekend.
Yeah, and he's gone.
Next,
Right?
That's
And
Yes.
he's been made to apologize. Do you know the thing that,
I wouldn't have apologized if I was him.
when you think about it, Jay-Z said, obviously,
Everybody apologizes.
if you've listened to the story of OJ,
Yes, I remember.
he literally just makes a statement like, do you want to know why the Jews own so much or whatever?
Yeah.
Bam!
Yeah.
Anti-Semitism.
It was a problem. Yeah.
Now, they're starting to draw a parallel between anti-Zionism
Yeah.
and anti-Semitism.
I can
They're
see
literally
it.
trying to equate the two. Anti-Zionism, I think it's a legitimate stance. Zionism is one of the worst forms of racism on planet Earth. I mean, Zionism, they use the principles of Zionism to justify how they took over Palestine, to justify how they treat Palestinian people. But then again, they've got so much control over the media, they're known as the only democratic state in the Middle East.
Facts. I know. Say no more. My last point on that is then I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Guardian newspaper talking about racism, and then after all of that, using Kano's picture instead of Wiley's picture. So how are you talking about racism and then you pick the wrong black man? Like, all black men look alike. You literally, like, I'm like, come on, you must.
It's not even the
I know it's
classic
not.
Guardian.
Yeah, but fam, have you seen how they apologised? They apologised to Kano, but not to Wiley.
I sorry, we didn't want to drag you into this hotness, Kano.
Yeah, like
You put Kano's face all over the internet.
Next thing you know, Kano's waking up
Like, yo, this guy's anti-Semitic. Yeah, not giving a good reason why. And Kano wakes up in the morning like, what did I do?
it's pathetic.
Anyway, let's move on.
I think it's. I've coined a term for it, and I'd like to refer it as Jewish fragility.
Let's move on.
Or Semitic fragility.
No. So the agenda for today. My drink is still over there.
Okay, we're gonna get into the agenda now.
So, do you want me to?
Am I gonna have to edit anything out?
No, please. Go on.
Do you want me to read it?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to get on with it? Alright,
So on today's agenda, it's let's discuss relations between black and mixed race people. So point 1 is the one drop rule. Does mixed race privilege exist? Do black people exclude mixed race people? Is the mixed race experience more complicated than the black experience? Is racism possible between black and mixed race people? Colorism from both sides, and how does it affect mixed race people?
Okay, so what's first?
Which the one drop rule.
What's the one drop rule? Oh, you mean the one they did in slavery?
Yeah, the one drop rule.
Because if you got one drop of blood,
you don't necessarily have to follow.
Yeah, we're gonna get into a conversation. That's fine. But
so the one drop rule is,
so the one drop rule essentially was because originally when they were bringing slaves over, it was very obvious to tell who was black.
Yeah.
But what happened was, as people started mixing and started
mixing. That's
Yes.
not what they were doing.
As
They
people
carry on.
started-
Yeah. As the slave owners started pushing themselves about black women.
Yes.
Let's just keep it real.
Correct,
That's
okay.
how it wasn't mixed.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Don't put me on.
Okay, go on. Sorry.
Okay.
I ain't eating, you know.
Okay, but as those things started happening,
Yeah.
and it started to become a thing where white people didn't want anyone who wasn't of white blood infiltrating white privilege, essentially. So even if you looked white, you're still classed as a slave. You were still having the same rights as a slave, or even during Willie Lynch time.
That makes sense. I guess they would have seen it because I suppose if you have a black person and a white person come together, you have a myriad of different colours that will come out of that.
Yeah.
So I have some cousins that are very, very light. So it's like, well, two could pass as potentially white people, but it's like, no, you're not because you have black blood. So therefore, that I guess that's where that rule comes into
Kind of
play.
reminds me of like South Africa with apartheid, because they had the pencil rule for that. So if there was a movie called Skin that I watched, it's about it's a beautiful movie, isn't it? A beautiful movie as in it opened up a whole conversation to do with how people are treated. Because we know about apartheid, but we don't know personal kind of perspectives of these people there. So I think the girl was born to two white parents, and she came out
kind of with mixed hair. She was light skinned with
afro hair.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they wanted to label her
as white.
But society wanted to label her as black. Because she looked black, and they used the pencil. And if your hair could hold up a pencil,
the pencil rule.
Hold up a pencil, then you're black. And if it fell
slides
through,
off,
then you're white.
I've heard this before. Yo, that's crazy.
Which Before watching that movie, I never knew.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying it's beautiful.
Here's the
Not my so sorry, I'm sorry.
Again, I think I mentioned it on the podcast before that a lot of the people on my dad's side of the family are of dual heritage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and the hair ranges like, you know, necessarily that rule is very, very stupid. Like I got one cousin that pencil's falling out, and I got another cousin where that hair's going nowhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like, wow.
I think the difference.
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm mixed, so yeah, things like that. Obviously, it's not really, but it is a perfect example though of like, and that's sort of the simpleness of it is how people's minds are now though. I think. Definitely.
Jeez. That's terrible.
I think, but the difference was with her. Both her parents were white on the outside.
Yeah.
They must have had black.
I think she was a throwback. Is that what it's called? When they've got black in them, and then
it came out.
They've come out to the one-drop rule again. They don't know they're black, and they've had a baby.
And then boom.
Yeah.
And then her own family anyway.
And it all kind of stems from there. So essentially, when we've got what we have now, it stems from the one-drop rule. I believe so, because as much as we think as mixed race people we have privileges, it's social privileges, because you still have in terms of socio-economic privileges, we're just black. It's just the same as being black. It doesn't matter whether you're mixed race.
So do we think that mixed race privilege exists then?
Oh, is that what we're getting into?
Socially,
does mixed race privilege exist? Come on, let's talk to the guest speaker today. What is your thoughts on that page?
Mixed race privilege. Of course it exists. If you go back, okay, to simple war slogans, yeah. If you're black, get back. If you're brown, stick around. You're all right.
Wow. Sorry, can you say that again?
If get back. If you're
brown,
you can stick around. If you're white, you're definitely all right, basically.
Wow.
I'm talking.
Look at Tanashi's face.
War slogans, okay. So stemming back even from that, as a mixed race, when it comes to mixed race privilege, there is still a little bit more of a privilege.
So brown, you can stay around.
Than a black person has, because even the one-drop rule, but we're still seeing, because I've been in situations, you know what I mean, where it's, because I'm quite dark for a mixed race person, however, so it's a little bit different for me sometimes, because a lot of my other mixed race friends who are quite lighter, they're a little bit more socially accepted, and it was a certain time though. So when I was in around year 10, 11, so that was 2007, 8.
Don't give it away.
Things like around that era though, people like Rihanna and stuff. So this lighter skin complexion women started coming into the mainstream media, and then mixed raceness was sexy then. Okay, so it was like, it still wasn't black girls. Black girls aren't there yet. It's almost like a thing now. That's how it was in the media. Because up until, like, for instance, like I said, the whole way through school, I was more racially bullied and completely ignored. Never had one single boyfriend. All of a sudden, year 10, 11, there's Rihanna. There's, you know, all these people coming into the mainstream media, and now it's all like, that's when the fetish started.
You're all right.
That's when the mixed race fetish. Do you know what I mean? It's, I want to have mixed race, that whole fetish thing. So privilege in that sense. I think
through the media, it just makes sense.
So we're saying really mixed race privilege is based off. It's still based off white perception, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Everything is based off white perception when it comes to
that's true.
That mixed race privilege.
Go on.
I think mixed race privilege. It first of all, there are a lot of contributing factors to mixed race privilege. One of them being the fact that Eurocentric standards define a lot of things in terms of beauty, etc. So being mixed race is almost a fair compromise.
Yeah, because if you manage to get your mum's or your whoever the white person's features are, you get their features, but then you get the brown skin from the other parent, then you're kind of like, this is the best of both worlds scenario.
But that's what people used to say though. There's sort of comment that in my later teenage years I would hear, like, from random people. It's that inherent racism that don't even realise they're saying. I'd get random white people being like, oh, you got the best of both worlds though, wouldn't you, babe?
Hovis,
yeah.
And I
bet, did you find it offensive?
Red, darling, like.
Did you find it offensive?
Do you know why I find it offensive? Because, as we've discussed, like I said, it's the mixed race privilege, and it's more societal. But when it comes to, you know, statistical figures, when they say things like BAME, I'm blended in with black and brown people. I'm not in the statistics as, you know, mixed race. If the rates of mixed and black people when it comes to when it comes to housing, education, they are still falling at the complete bottom line over any other races. So my point used to always be, you think it's best of both worlds, but to you I'm mixed race and you want these fetish like mixed race babies and, you know, light skin and these cute hair and stuff, but to me I'm seen on the outside world, like the race aspects don't stop, like I still find it hard in certain like aspects of my life.
Scenarios.
Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like great, but socially it can be seen as great. The whole lighty effect, which does my head in, but whatever. But you know what I mean? In my head, in the real times of it, when I was going through university, I was seeing aspects of my mixed raceness and my blackness that was holding me back in terms of what they wanted. Do you know what I'm saying? So socially it's great, but in the times of the real world, like it's still a problem.
Yeah.
I think mixed race privilege, it's been around from slavery days.
Well,
It's the house versus the I think people need to realize. So the reason why we're having this discussion is to actually bring people closer together. It's not to separate people or to keep them apart. And the idea is to just understand why those things are there in the first place.
Have that conversation. Okay, so if you see, back in slavery days, the slave master figured out that the best person, you see, mixed race people, they could create a sort of a class between
like a bridge.
white and black.
Yeah, a bridge.
And they could use the mixed race people to police the black people.
But not always.
Not always, but you always hear about, you know, the house Negro. The house Negro was usually a mixed race.
Look at the black man.
Because they
retained.
The lighter skin people.
It was always a lighter skin people, and it was easier because colours, like right now, if colours always make a difference in politics, right? Political parties usually use red. You've got the Green Party,
red or blue.
Yeah, red or blue. In gangs, you've got
red,
crimson bloods.
Yeah.
So colours.
It's important.
Yeah, they're very important. I don't know why.
No, you do know why, because it's easily identifiable.
Yeah, it's easily identifiable. So by doing that, they kind of created that separation.
But that's not anybody's fault.
It's not anybody's
I
fault.
think people need to remember that.
It's not anybody's fault. I think the problem that I find is not everybody that's mixed race is privy to their mixed race privilege.
Okay.
Or would I say privy, or not everybody that's mixed race accepts.
Okay, so I had a conversation with somebody who I'm not going to name, but they knew that we was doing this podcast, and they said that they didn't feel like they had mixed race privilege. And the reason why they felt they didn't have mixed race privilege is because they felt like they were getting beaten from two sides.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying to you? So although if you look in the music world, is a prime example. So if you are a woman in the music world and you're doing quote unquote black music, if you are lighter skinned, which is more of a colorism issue than it is a race issue, then you are likely, if you look at our massive superstars in R&B that are women, they are lighter. Well, even dancehall's another one.
Yeah, a prime example. Dancehall. If you look at the dancehall artists that have been overly successful, and I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go. Bob Marley.
Yeah.
And the rest of his kids.
Yeah.
Sean Paul.
Yeah.
Shaggy.
Yeah.
Shensia. All the S's.
Collie Buds.
Yeah.
They've all seen
he did very well considering.
They've all seen
that's true.
commercial success.
Because they're able to carry over.
Yes.
Right. Red Rat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, you know, like global reactions. It was when she went on.
Sorry, say that again.
When
Spice,
dark skin, when she got her biggest and global, you know, the biggest following up and stuff like that, started charging more for her Instagram posts, is when she went on Love and Hip Hop and made a big thing about bleaching her skin. She come out looking white.
Yeah.
And she had to make
people made a big deal.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And everyone's like saying this, but I get what she was like, I'm making a point, because she didn't bleach her skin for good. She basically did makeup, it was makeup. And what she was trying to explain from that, since doing that though on Love and Hip Hop, her follow rating has gone up. Do you know what I mean? Everything's gone up in terms of analytics.
Prime example, Vybz Kartel. Vybz Kartel did not get his big break until he bleached his skin. Kartel did not get his big break until.
That's hard for me. I've been following Kartel since 99.
No,
I've always loved Kartel though, so that's hard for me.
No, think about it. Cartel did
You mean outside of the
outside
dance
arena.
Yeah.
When Cartel bleached his skin, it was a different thing. But when Alkaline bleached, it was a different thing. Alright, let's just draw in bleaching, right? Bleaching to me is not foolishness. Bleaching to me is literally
economics.
It's economics. It's survival.
Okay, so that again is not.
If I bleach my skin right now, or if I was lighter skinned, right?
More opportunities.
I'll have more opportunities as a DJ.
So that is a colorism issue.
It is a colorism issue.
It's a colorism issue.
Yeah. I think mixed race people that say sort of I haven't got mixed race privilege because I've been that's almost like, so when we're describing white privilege to people and they get defensive, you can't get defensive of privilege. A privilege doesn't mean anything to do with your upbringing, your hardships, your even status. Privilege is just something that you might not have to go through, that someone else has to go through due to their being a minority or due to them being darker, etc., when it comes to race. That's what that's what privilege is. You can't almost get offended because I've had it from both ways, but I would never say that I haven't had a mixed race privilege, because there was a big period in my life where being mixed race was such a fashion. It carried me through, and I played on that. Do you know what I mean? And I did, and like I said to everyone, like in the sense of that being at it time, I know I wasn't getting as much.
But I respect the fact that you're actually willing to say that you played on it.
Why would
a lot of mixed race people do play on it, but they don't.
I'll be honest. I just think you've got to be honest about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're going to have these kind of discussions and stuff, and for me, like, because I'm not one of the people that would say this is why I sort of in the wider situation. I'm never like, oh, you know, you've done stuff, said stuff, that's it now. I've made mistakes. I've been in rooms where there's been racist remarks and I've not stepped up and said nothing. But I think like change is better than denial. Do you know what I mean? So I think like you've got to openly accept it and then you've got to move on. Like, and I have played on that mixed raceness. And I feel bad for saying it, but I did as a teenager. I played
why would you not?
and I left it aside. So it's I just think it's definitely there.
I agree.
Okay.
It is there. I agree. It's there.
Okay.
This is the Afro Perspective Podcast, the home of over-opinionated young voices.
Is the mixed race experience more complicated than the black experience?
I can't really answer that.
Yes.
Why do you think so?
I think it's more complicated because it's about self-identification and how society identifies you. So sometimes you can be in situations where, okay, for me, for example, I feel black in society, but there'll be somebody ready to tell me that I'm not on either side. But that's down to colorism. I know it on a deeper scale, it's not... things that happen in society, if you're not educated on colour, I don't want to use the word educated, but if you don't understand colorism, you'll just take it as face value, so you'll take it personal and it'll upset you. I've got black friends that have called me a mixed breed before.
Rude.
Yeah.
Very rude.
Yeah.
What? Like?
Yeah.
Wow.
But when we was younger, when everybody was more...
You remember people used to say half-caste?
Yeah. So
mixed breed is a whole different...
Yeah, but these are things that I've heard, or like, not black, not white.
The word half-caste, I remember a time when we used to use it and it was almost PC.
It was PC.
It was, and then they changed it.
It was PC until times change though, innit? When you realise the more, because almost like the more woke the generations get, the more you realise what is and what isn't acceptable. So you sort of have to move with the times and move with the change. So half caste, we're not just half of a caste. That's just one caste. That's just saying there's one superior race.
Yeah.
That's why eventually, even in my, because I used to get called half caste and I didn't care. I described myself as half caste until I educated myself enough to realise that's not the right terminology that I should be using to define myself as a human. Do you know what I mean?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I know what you mean, because it was the common phrase.
I remember a time when mixed race people used to refer to themselves as half-caste.
Yes, I remember.
Well, there was a time when black people were referred to as Negroes.
Yeah,
so
and that was normal.
And that was normal.
Yeah.
I'm talking about I've been in England since 2002. When I came,
it was still being used, especially in the northern hemisphere.
No, yeah. Growing up for me, like half caste was a normal thing, but then I also got called like mongrel.
Same. Yeah, mongrel. Yeah.
What's that got to do with
You know, like I'm not a pure breed. I'm not a pure breed, so I'm mongrel.
I can see that happening when I think about it, because there'll be certain black people that will be like, no,
yeah, because
and there'll be certain white people that will just be like,
no.
So can I ask something?
Sometimes it really is a case of that, because I grew up, it's mad for me because I grew up predominantly, so the first, I'd say 12 years of my life, it was predominantly white surroundings, white background, white education.
Right.
And it wasn't until past that because all of my black family live in London, I go see them and stuff, but it's not every day, do you know what I mean, education. So it wasn't until I started putting myself in the black community. So I saw it from both sides, and for me, I've always had the struggle, well, up until now, I know myself, but growing up as a child, it was sometimes I was too black for the white people and too white for the black people.
I can see that
That was
happening.
my biggest issue growing up, for me personally, like breaking into both races, like that was my biggest struggle in both sides.
I suppose if you're black, inherently black, or supposedly, then you just know that you're treated like this and you're over here, so there's less of an identification issue than if you're mixed race, because I suppose if you are of mixed heritage but you've grown up solely around white people and you happen to come around black people, you're gonna get clapped for that. Immediately.
Exactly. And think about it, you're getting brought up by people who have only been brought up by their fault being, it's not their fault at all. This is what I'm saying, it's never a division thing, but in the sense of, if you've been brought up in a strictly black household, it's that sense of love yourself, like you're gonna have to do this, you might have to work harder, but you're a king, you're a queen, do you know what I mean? You have that self-confidence built within you, whereas when it's a lot of mixed families that I've, do you know what I mean, noticed within my sort of people that I've been around, it is that sort of instance of that, the white privilege sort of molds that. So my mum used to say things like, I don't see colour, and it wasn't until I had to teach it on the fact of like, no, please see my colour, understand my colour and struggles, appreciate it, and then we move past that. You should never judge me on my colour, or do you know what I mean, just like me due to my colour, but you always have to see colour because that's all the world does see.
Okay.
So in the terms of getting brought up by privilege, it is a very confusing world. Like really.
Okay, so you mentioned about the being brought up, and I'm not firing any shots whatsoever. However, do you not feel that it is a parent's responsibility to educate themselves if they are raising somebody who will be deemed different from them, even if they're, as a mom, I understand, or a dad, I understand that you see your children and that is also but at the same time, you automatically know the society is not going to see it that way, so I almost feel there's a responsibility there.
100% agree. Okay. I 100% agree, but I was sort of obviously lucky in the sense of the only reason I speak out how I am now, do you know what I mean, doing what I'm doing, is because even though my mum said terms like I don't see colour, she understood that colour would be an issue. So she always encouraged, when people used to say to me all the time in school, you're too loud, you're too aggressive, you've got an attitude, my mum used to always slap them down. That's just, she's not a horrible person. She hasn't got a bad heart. This is her, actually that's how she is, that's her. I'm trying to dilute these parts of her to make her more susceptible to almost white modern society, do you know what I mean? So in that sense, but there are a lot of kids out there whose parents, it is a shame, because it's almost like they can't see past their own privilege to then educate their children on the hardships that they...
Oh wow, that's the bar.
True.
That's the bar.
What I want to know is, so our previous point, we all agree that mixed race privilege exists.
Yes.
So when you take into consideration your experience as a mixed race individual, and the question at hand is the mixed race experience more difficult, more complicated than the black experience? When you take your privilege into consideration, how does that weigh with the black experience? Because I mean, as a mixed race person, you know the black experience. Like as a black person, I only see.
I don't know the mixed race experience.
I only see the privilege. And it's almost like, okay, show me, because alright, if I'm honest with you, I did not know that there was. Alright, I'd be naive to say I didn't know that there was that issue between black and mixed race in terms of their relations, because. Alright, let me just take you back to...
Would you like me to take over to that?
No. Right, so if I take you back to my childhood, I grew up in Zimbabwe, right? Now, in Zimbabwe, your typical mixed race person is going to have a mixed race mum and a mixed race dad.
Right.
Mulatto.
You don't necessarily have a large proportion of mixed race people that are from black and white, because... Black and you barely have black and white because of the class difference.
It's a whole area.
It's highly unlikely you're gonna get a white girl that's got a black, a mixed race child to a black man.
Okay.
So most of the mixed race people there are mixed race and mixed race parents, and it almost goes over about a good few generations.
Wow.
So I remember a time back home when mixed the relations between black and mixed race were very, very bad. Like, mixed race people did not identify with black people whatsoever. They had their own neighborhood. If anybody that grew up in Zimbabwe, if you ask them about Arcadia or Sunningdale, these are areas where they were predominantly mixed race. And it wasn't safe for you as a black man to go into these areas because you were likely going to be met with violence.
Okay.
I remember seeing a whole truckload of mixed race man pull up into our block where I grew up, and it was beef on sight. Do you know what I mean? Them kind of things. I never understood it because, but then it's a little different here though. It's a little bit
very far.
Yeah, it's very different.
Well, no, I get what you're saying, but do you know what it is from a mixed race perspective? On the flip side of it, like the privilege sort of way out the black side of it. So imagine being as a black person being on the outside. So I got stopped, for instance, when my baby was 6 months old in his pram, and they'd invoked under section 60. They'd invoked the article basically where they can stop and search anybody in any area without suspicion due to high crime. It basically gives them a bigger reason to stop and search all the black males and females within the area. So I got stopped and searched, and I don't look like a criminal. Do you know what I mean? I've never been to prison and been arrested in my life type thing. And I got stopped and searched my buggy. So in the sense of like I said, how society sees me, so then I'm angry now because I know the systematic and institutional racism within Britain, yeah? So then you think even little things like when I watch even films that have or history, when you're doing history and you learn about slavery, it's almost having, not that I dislike obviously any side of my white family, but then going to try and have a conversation with someone with white privilege who take that white privilege as a defence mechanism. Me trying to say to certain members of my family, you're not hearing me, this is why I'm angry, and this is your guilt that you're feeling. It's called generational guilt, okay? It's the guilt from what's happened within, do you know what I mean, your generation with the ancestors. And trying to explain white privilege to certain members of my family to the point that they're not speaking to me. They don't want to talk to me. The person that I've also organised the protest with, her family, a big chunk of my family have stopped talking to her.
Wow.
The predominantly white side, because they think that we're pro-black, pro-militant, and we're attacking by saying white privilege. So it's almost that hard sense of we can see the privilege. I can see my own mixed race privilege because I've seen how I've been brought up with the white side of my family. But then when I'm experiencing the black difficulties and disadvantages as a black woman and as a black person, they're not understanding that because their privilege has that whataboutery. What about this though? What about that? And this is why they try and defend their privilege, and it's hard to explain to them, like I said, that it's not about any kind of monetary value.
It's almost like hold on. It's almost. I do get this. So from a mixed race perspective, you think about it this way. So if you have an issue and you go back to your family 9 times out of 10 will understand your issue. So I'm not talking about your immediate family, I'm talking about your general. So I can go to the local cookout, and I can raise an issue, and it is a safe space for me to be in. So aunties, uncles, cousins, everybody gets it. Now, if you are mixed race, you may not be privy to the same level of comfort.
So at least deliver things. Do you see what I'm saying? I can go to my black side and be like, listen, this one white woman was going mad at me, she was calling me this. Even I could say she was calling me the N-word, going mad, but if I went to my white side and even just said, oh, this white woman, or certain blacks would be, why do you have to bring race into it? Why do you have to bring race into it? Because they don't realise that race is the main issue and the main topic of, and do you know what I mean, the backwardness of their hatred, like the person.
That's what I mean. It's almost like you're attacking them, even though you're not attacking them, because you're now talking about white people. Yeah, that's crazy.
I think it is a problem. I think it's a human trait to. You see, anybody that's got privilege, right? Whether it's tribal privilege, whether it's whether it's color privilege, i.e., even among black people, we have a problem convincing, like dark-skinned people have a problem convincing light-skinned people that light-skinned people have privilege.
It's easy to do though.
No, but there's some light-skinned people that will argue that they don't have privilege in society because of their light skin.
Okay. Yeah.
They're not
that's because they don't know. There's a lack of like self-knowledge, understanding, especially if you're saying you're coming from like a whole white family as well. Say if you're mixed race white family, how are you going to know you have mixed race privilege.
Yeah, because you're not going to feel it. It's what you feel as an individual. You're not going to feel it. So when you have it,
there's almost a need to empathise with people who have privilege because they don't necessarily
see it because they feel
see their privilege because it's normal. That's the status quo.
Yeah.
And challenging the status quo almost makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you challenge alright, here's the thing. We've had this discussion before. If I was white, I would likely deny my white privilege. If I was white, I would likely be racist.
But that's all good and true until somebody lays, because the way that I go into discussions now is I'm going with hard facts. So it's all good you trying to deny your white privilege, but when I say at this company there are no representations of any other colour than white, what are you going to tell me?
No, alright, here's the thing, Anton. Perception pretty much drives like
of course.
And your perceptive development is literally in your early years. So as a white kid, if you have never been taught to perceive yourself as privileged, you've been taught to perceive what your standing in society.
I understand what you're saying.
As normal.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
It's almost like, what's this guy talking about?
Cognitive dissonance.
You know what it is?
Cognitive
it's defense,
dissonance.
though,
Yes.
It's that defense mechanism, because privilege, when you don't understand privilege, like I said, it's coming from a defensive place, because it's almost like you're trying to say, no, your problems aren't worse than mine, type thing, and it's a human instinct in that sense. But when it comes to, because I know a lot of people who realised their white privilege, accepted it, apologised for certain things, you know what I mean, they might or might have not said. But when it comes to a lot of white privilege, because it's always like, well, what about when white people have it? It's the what about.
That's the usual
whole point
argument.
is you can't have any, when it comes to fighting any kind of human rights, do you know what I mean? You can't have what about. It's when you're talking about like child slavery, you can't say, well, what about the adults?
All lives matter.
All lives matter.
Wow. Do you know what? I'm stealing that, you know. Yeah, that is like you're telling me saying, looking at child slavery and saying, what about adult slavery? You just sound like an idiot.
You sound like a fool, innit? Exactly. It's like, what about it? That needs to be demolished. And I think when people realise the privilege is not a bad thing and they actually accept their privilege, that's when you can build on it and then you can change. Do you know what I mean? The whole concept of how your privilege is like perceived to the world.
Okay, so the problem is, we're all selfish as humans.
You speak for yourself.
And humans, I'm speaking for all of us. Anton, if we were in a position of privilege, I mean, it goes back
why
to
would you want to give it up?
Yeah, it goes back to the other discussion that we had was between Caribbeans and Africans. There was a time when Caribbeans were further up on the social ladder and they did not want to share that.
It's our thing.
With these new African kids that are just coming like, what they? Nah, forget them. We've waited long enough to be cool. So now we're cool. Who are these guys?
First of all, we're cool from when we touchdown. But you
get what I mean. So it's a human trait. It's a natural human trait to want to retain your privilege, and we're all selfish in that way.
I don't think we're naturally
consciously retaining.
It's not. It's an unconscious bias.
Yeah, it's not.
It's a very unconscious bias.
And if you take it back to Willie Lynch as well, and why we are where we are now in terms of colorism and mixed race people, it's because Willie Lynch made that speech, or wrote that letter and said that if we separate them based on the colour of their skin, it will last for 300 years, if not longer, and we're still in that now. And that's them from slavery.
Okay, so then we could look into one of the questions on there was, do black people exclude mixed race people? Now I want to speak from a personal. Sorry,
go on.
No, I want to speak from. You said generalize.
Did you finish making your point?
It's fine, yeah. It's okay. I'm done now, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so I was thinking that, obviously from a personal standpoint, rightly or wrongly, whenever I meet somebody who I consider mixed race, I treat them like myself until they show me otherwise.
Yes.
So when I saw that, I was like, what do you mean you're excluded? But then I've seen some people have come to me and they said, yeah, black people have definitely excluded me in the past, which was news for me. And it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, so that's something we probably need to discuss. I can't build on that point because
I don't exclude mixed race people. I mean, obviously there's that whole stupid narrative that but
we're not getting into that today, Anyway,
I just want to speak honestly, right?
Yeah.
I do not exclude mixed race people. And here's the thing. as a black person, I take mixed race people as they come in the sense of you've got mixed race people identify differently. Mm-hmm. You've got mixed race people that identify as black and they're very clear on that position. You've got mixed race people that identify as mixed race and they're clear on that position. Mm-hmm. I ain't got a problem with that. And then you've got mixed race people that don't necessarily associate themselves with black people because they're more towards their white side. Yes. We all know the spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. As a black person, you've got to kind of empathize with us to say we have to kind of, it's almost different dealing with different types of people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when it comes to certain issues, I can only see with somebody that identifies with me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I can get with a girl that identifies as a white girl as long as she's willing to whatever. I can get with a girl that identifies as a mixed race girl, and I can get with a girl that identifies as a black girl.
Okay.
But when it comes to right, but where politically, when I'm thinking politically, I can only see with somebody that sees with me as a black person and that sees my experience. So I can't be around somebody that says, okay, you're mixed race, but you don't understand white privilege or you don't understand racism.
Yeah, because you won't have a safe space at home. So it's going back to the safe space at home that I was discussing. Like if you're in a relationship with somebody and they don't understand, and this is a problem for a lot of people in this country. It's not necessarily the race. It's being able to understand and being politically aligned. If I am not able to come home and say, yo, you see where that the policeman treated me and
exactly.
and get into all of this, and then me tell you that it was. I feel like it was made racially driven, and you say, what aboutery that Paige mentioned?
It's like alright.
That's a problem.
It's like there's certain conversations that I want to be able to have. Like for example, like we're having this conversation, right? Yeah. We already know where Asha stands, and we already know where Paige stands just from the conversation. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that we're discussing right now that you couldn't say to some mixed race people because they'd be like.
But not everybody's going to agree with it.
And it's not even necessarily agreeing, but it's understanding perspective. Do you know what I mean? It's understanding perspective. And if we can't see on that, I'm now at that stage where it's just
now it's like I don't agree with you.
It's like you don't have to agree with me, but there's certain things that we can't
not be politically aligned.
Politically aligned and still be in the same room. Okay. So, and also as a black person, my experience with mixed race people differs.
Yeah, but people are people. It's always good.
I mean, it's subjective to individuals.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we take our experiences with people and we use them to judge.
Go on, Paige.
How go on.
Go on, Paige. Go on, Paige. Shoot. Go on, shoot for me.
Where should I come in?
Go on.
The only issue, that I have about. Is so like I said, when it comes to, because my biggest thing is the whole coconut, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've been called coconut a lot of my life, just because, like, especially when it comes to me being quite well spoken and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, I can go full crazy, but in general terms, that's just how I like to. Do you know what I mean? That's just me. I just like to talk like this. So there's been times I've been called a coconut and stuff like that, and now I've taken my time out to educate myself though on my history, on my black history, on my blackness. There are people out there that, like, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Yeah? There are people out there, and there's mixed race people, and even full black people out there that have parents have been so systematized by the racism that they've been brought up in and the institutions. When it comes to as well, like doctors and stuff like that, black doctors, when they're fully in the institutions, they want their kids, to be in there with them. So they will dilute them, say, you act like this, you don't act like that, you must get straight A's, you must do well, you never act like a third, things like this. So there are people out there, mixed and black, that haven't had the educational background to understand and to almost be in the same shoes as you, because from the outside world they are diluting themselves to be like basically accepted by the white people of the world and in the institutions, because every institution, I'm talking school, health, like education, housing, all these institutions that mold you and create you as a person, there are people that don't have the educational backgrounds from their parents. Do you know what I mean? And or they might not have, they've lived in England all their life and so have their parents, but then do you know what I'm saying? So they might not have the heavy accent or be able to speak in the lingo that you speak in, etc., or even have the same struggles. But then why, as we as black people, should we downplay their experiences or call them coconuts or make them feel like they can't speak up? Or why are we not educating them? Why are we not saying, come with us and we'll build you together? The problem is, I think, that within the black community, whether it be Africans versus Jamaicans, whether it be light versus dark, it's always seems to be, and I get it's systematic and I get that it's been bred within us to do that, because obviously the only way they can win is division within the biggest, you know what I mean? The biggest threat, you have to divide. Otherwise they'll conquer everything. And I think what it is with black people, we're not a minority, we're perceived to be a minority, but we're not. Globally, we are not. Do you see what I'm saying? We're not a minority. If we came together as a whole, we could literally like rule, as we have done previously. But the way that it's divided. So instead of helping our brothers and sisters, we almost put them down. And it's not even, I'm not saying that I'm not slagging anyone off, like, do you know what I mean? We've all been, myself included, have made sort of little mistakes like that growing up. Do you know what I mean? Within our teenage years, especially, because we don't know, we haven't got the brain that we've got now sitting here talking. We didn't have these platforms talking. Like I said, it took me till I was 15 years old to even feel okay about being mixed race.
Wow.
And I'm not even the dark girl. But you know what it was? That it's another thing about being the mixed race versus black as well, because then we're the token black people. So it's almost like I've got to now speak to the black people, because at work they'll pick me because I'm a light dark, but I'm not dark.
Nah, you smacked it. Yeah. She's a face that fits. We need somebody that's of colour, but at the same time we don't want to be not too much colour.
I'm well spoken, but I've also got to be so pro-black, and I'm like, luckily for you, so I can do both. Like, I am both, but not everybody in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know what I mean? My little boy is he's not an outspoken person. Like, someone called him the N-word not long ago. Someone tried to call the police today. A neighbour up the street tried to call the police on my little boy today because he was sharing bikes, swapping bikes, and riding bikes with the neighbour. The neighbour woman said, and she didn't come to me, she shouted at him. He came home in floods of tears, crying, saying, "Mummy, they're going to call the police. What do I do? Mummy, they're going to call the police." She said, "I'm banned from the top of the street." But that was 4 black kids, and then the 6 other white kids. There was 3 white kids that were telling me to piss off when I was walking away. They were allowed to stay there. Right? This on childminder. Things like this. See what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm like, it needs to, the whole thing needs to be, instead of like being like having the black versus the light, and you know what I mean, like the African versus Jamaican, because I'm Guyanese as well. I'm nothing. So I'm like, where do I stand?
Sorry. She said something about Guyanese people earlier on.
She's Guyanese.
Thank you. But I don't know, for me personally, where I'm from in Peterborough, growing up, I can honestly probably count on my hands the amount of Guyanese people I know.
I know a few of them.
None.
I know them there.
None.
In
Jamaica or
like
St. Vincent.
So, you know, like, when it comes to like, I met a mixed race person and a white person. They were friends together that stood to me and said, like, "Where are you from, Africa or Jamaica?" And I was like, "Oh, Jamaica."
Like, Africa's one country, you know. Where are you from?
Like, summarize Africa
into an island time state. Like one thing.
And then they summarize the Caribbean
into Jamaica.
We had this conversation already.
Do you know the worst thing about it is? Do you know in Peterborough, there are probably just as many people that are from St. Vincent that are from Jamaica.
That's
literally. Yes.
No, I'd probably say, do you know what I'd probably say? I'd probably even say there might be slightly, in terms of family wise, might be even slightly a bit more, because there is a lot, like, St. Vincent has deep roots.
Hence. Like literally. Literally. Hence.
From St. Vincent.
There's a lot. There are a lot of St. Vincent.
At least Guyana has been represented somewhere.
Have you got in your
Stop it. I'm 50-50, bro. Stop it.
Anton.
My dad tells me about this all the time.
Yeah.
It's a system for another day.
But no, in terms of like, going back to what I said, I just think instead of this whole like, because like there's been a lot of people that, you know what I mean, would never like to admit it, that have put other black people down just because they might not be as cultured, but I'm like, they've obviously not had the opportunities to be, so let's just teach them instead, innit? That's my whole main mantra, to be honest. Like, that's what I'm trying to live by, because like they're trying to divide us and it's so clear as sight. So I think instead of any kind of division, like even in Peterborough, it's very like, you've got the Africans and you've got the Jamaicans, St. Vincent's, even like they're different, and then you've got the Portuguese that are in the whole other end.
Yeah, that's facts.
You see what I'm saying? And I'm like, the Portuguese people won't really like, their family wise won't even blend. Like we've got a centre here, like it's meant to be like African Caribbean type of centre type of thing, but the Portuguese are like, no, do you know what I mean? And I'm like, this whole division.
I wish Paige was there when we did the.
Yeah, I know.
Which episode?
What episode was it? We had you were talking about identity issues in the black community, and we basically made the whole point
it's a big
that
thing.
if we actually put away our nationalities You see national pride, that Jamaicans versus Trinidadians versus Guyanese versus Grenadians versus, and then you got Zimbabweans versus Nigerians versus Ghanaians versus South Africans
versus Kenyans.
There's always versus. But when it comes to Caucasians, they identify economically. They identify as one.
Yeah.
Right, exactly my point. And so do many other races.
Asians or whatsoever, when it comes to, they still trade amongst each other. It's only black people that won't trade with another person because you're from that country and I'm from that country. You've got people. Anyway, let's not dive in.
300 years.
Yeah, it's not purposeful.
Okay, yeah. I think we got to the end of this one.
Take a break.
Take a break time. Literally half an hour already.
Welcome back to the Afro Perspective podcast. We're just going to conclude the final part of the podcast with anything that we've not touched upon. So is anything that anybody wants to add?
Start with a special guest. Work our way around the table.
Okay, the only thing I probably want to add that I don't know if I put in properly correctly was that, like you said earlier, touched upon, anything that we've spoken about today has nothing to do with division. I feel like, if anything, that main message, like, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, that, do you know what I mean, is that, like, all black people just need to start branding, do you know what I mean, together and working together, uniting together with the rest of the world, do you know what I mean, and almost educating people in that sense and getting the message across in the sense of, instead of almost putting down people for their lack of education, let's first try and educate them, give them a chance, you know what I mean, before you condemn them in a sense like that. And then if they can't be changed, they can't be changed. But the only way we can make real change is to actually try and change the minds of the people that matter. So
I like that. I think initially sometimes there is an assumption that you're expecting a certain level of, I don't want to say consciousness, but you know what I mean, from a person who is black or mixed race, and then I suppose when it doesn't come, we automatically switch off and say, yo, that person isn't for me, when in fact, actually, it may be our moral responsibility to at least open that door to say, yo, there's all of this as well, you know.
They also have to be willing to.
Oh, of course,
that's what I'm saying, give them that first
sometimes you can plant the seed.
One chance. You can
Yeah.
try and educate them, and if they're not trying to even see you, you can tell from a person when you're talking to them if they're trying to hear your perspective or not.
Yeah.
I'm a big person in devil's advocate. I love to hear both sides of both points of the argument, but at the end of the day, right is right and wrong is wrong. And when it comes to race, we're not debating politics. We're not saying who should be the next prime minister. We're talking about basic human rights.
Yeah.
And we're talking about basic human experiences. So I think if they're not going to hear you the first time, then lost cause, move on to the next person. Don't stop talking.
Hold on. So that's funny you say that, but actually, I had a discussion with a said person in Sheffield. There wasn't even mixed race as a black person, but they probably identify more on the other side of the scale. And we had a argument that lasted probably 2 hours. Okay, just about racism according to black people. About the things that I would deem racist, the things that my experiences, how my experiences are not even singular to me, how I can ask any one of my friends, I can literally point to anybody in this room, anybody in this podcast, and ask, I know they're gonna have a plethora of examples, right? And I pointed out that he may not have realized that he may have himself been in some racist scenarios, and we argued. And then about a week later, he came back and he was like, you know what, actually,
what you were saying
did sink in.
So I've got a question to the panel. Right. I've written sentiments that allude to the idea of, for example, I made a statement to say black children need black schools. And black teachers.
Yes.
Right. I've alluded to the
which I understand
sentiment of we need black institutions. And one of the most opposition that I usually get when I utter those sentiments is I have a mixed race person that says, why are you excluding us? Or where do we fit in when you talk about black schools?
I'm glad you raised that. I am glad you raised this.
I sort of want to clarify on that to say.
Paige was just rubbing her hands just there.
Let him finish, Paige. Go on, let him finish. Let him land.
I want to sort of. I just want some clarity on that to say, you know, when black people talk black issues, right? it automatically includes mixed race people that identify with us. So you don't have to question where you fit in if you know that these issues affect you.
Yes.
So if I say we want a school for black children, as a mixed race parent, you're supposed to know that your child is not particularly in the best place
as a parent of a mixed race child.
Yeah, as a parent of a mixed race child, or even much less as a mixed race person that has mixed race children.
Yeah, that's true.
You have to understand that these issues are issues that apply to yourself. So when we have this conversation,
you're included.
You're automatically included unless you exclude yourself.
Yes.
I also
a lot of black people
acknowledge the fact that there are mixed race people that have made considerable differences in the black struggle. For example, Frederick Douglass was mixed race.
Yeah.
I think Rosa Parks was mixed race. So,
extending the white privilege to do what they needed to do.
in any instance where we have a discussion about black issues, I tend to end up being distracted by certain people that might say, well, where do we fit in? As Paige would coin it as the whataboutry.
Go on, Paige.
Okay, so the only thing, do you know what? I more or less agree with what you're saying. However, the only thing with me is in my perfect, almost ideal world, okay, in my sort of end game, it's equality for all. So in the terms of saying the only problem is when it comes to saying I want things like all black schools that teach like things like just predominantly black history and stuff like that, that's great and stuff. However, then that's almost perpetrating and it's a reaction to an action that's been put against us. So in my head, I'm saying let's not react. Okay, I want equality. If you look at predominantly a lot of white history, it involves black history. The issue with me when it comes to there's no black history in schools is because British people as a nation, we only like to say the good part of our history.
Oh my God!
So for things like Christopher Columbus, you're taught about him in school. He was a great man. However, he enslaved not only black people but a big majority of other ethnic minorities, one of the biggest like populations. You see what I'm saying? Over the years that he was doing all of his great stuff. So in the sense of like, I would rather we infiltrate the institutions that are already there. Because the institutions that are there, not bad in the terms of like, do you know what I mean, basic, do you know what I mean, fundamental needs. The institutions are there. What it is, the biggest issue for me, it's not necessarily about having black schools, it's about, like you said, implementing black leaders into the institutions that we've got.
No,
hold on.
Can I just say something, right?
Go on.
The problem with that page is, if we infiltrate, alright, for example, the biggest infiltration into the white supremacist institution that we've seen in modern times was Barack Obama being POTUS, right? What did Barack Obama do?
Yes,
but can I just say, this is what I'm saying, you can't, this is a token black man though.
Yeah.
No, this is the problem. Anytime we infiltrate these institutions, we infiltrate them as tokens.
No, we haven't infiltrated it. That's what I'm saying, right? So it basically, to me, it all stems down, but even before race, right, it's a class system, and it stems down in class, right? So it's the higher ruling, and it will always overrule the minority, which happens to be ethnic minorities, when it comes to places like Britain.
Okay.
And especially like America, by having a mixed race president, that's not them infiltrating it. I'm talking about when we start to, the more we speak out like now, we're putting pressure, on companies, on the NHS. People like Oxford, like I said, that article that came out has now pressured them to rethink their whole diversity, and now obviously they're gonna be probably putting black people in Oxford. But to us, that's fine, do that, to see what I'm saying. It's almost like a reversal type effect. The more pressure we put on them and make them see that type of thing, I know it's taking a lot of time, but it's a generational thing. Like, we're louder than we ever have been before.
But you can make noise and you can get these little crumbs thrown at you. But one thing I can tell you, you will never infiltrate a system that was designed.
Hold on. Right, so I agree that, let's go back to the history thing. So I agree that history in this country, because I think you came when you was a bit older, so history in this country is taught very, very, very pretty, because obviously Britain has probably one of the worst, if not the worst history in the entire world. Right? In the entire world. If you tell certain British people that, they get offended. I'm not sure why, because it's there in the books. If you read the books will tell you, they're not hidden it. So I think when they say they should teach Black history in school, I agree with you. They should just teach history in its entirety, right away from the beginning, right away to the end, whatever they've got.
But that would be
no.
Hold on, let me finish. Hold on, let me finish.
Let me just. Let me. Sorry. It's problematic.
Why is it problematic?
Asking to teach Black history in British schools.
Did I say that?
Problem.
Is that what I said?
No.
Is that what I said? That's not what I said. I said teach history in its entirety. British teach history in its entirety in the school system. I didn't say anything about teaching Black history particularly.
Black history is world history. That's how I feel.
Yeah, there you go.
In the national curriculum, they need to adjust it. All children, we send our children to school for like
5 years.
How many hours a day? Like 6 hours a day?
Yeah, 6
hours a day.
Yeah.
History, I remember, you'll remember from being in school, history class, it was always King Henry VIII and all his wives, all this types of glorified.
Yeah.
And then we learn slavery, and roots, Martin Luther King.
Alright, let me tell you something that's impossible, right? You can't teach history in its entirety in Britain.
You can.
You can't
They won't allow you to, but yeah.
It's impossible.
It's not impossible.
You
they
can't.
Choose not to, exactly.
No.
It's a choice.
And there's a reason why they choose not to.
What's the reason? Yes, I understand the reason why.
Because it will literally topple capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But do you not think, you're not thinking a slight way that's happening already now, bro? Like,
no, it's not.
No, but do you know what this generation is to me? Like, I spoke to a counsellor in Peterborough, and he says he's been counsellor for Peterborough for 55 years. He has never once in that 55 years seen the amount of people stand up. I'm talking all races. There was probably more white people at the first in the crowd than there was Black people.
Yeah, I saw the picture.
Paige, what's this? Paige, let me ask you something.
And help us understand.
Paige,
the first time.
Go on.
So what I'm saying to you is this generation, because what I'm saying to you is the more we normalise, okay, within the institutions, then all Black schools won't be a weird thing though. All Black schools will just be like an all Catholic school. Do you see what I'm saying? Where it's predominantly white.
Yeah, you have all
It'd be like an all African school. That wouldn't be weird then. It wouldn't be a weird thing. It wouldn't be an abnormal thing. That would be a normal part of life.
No, but here's the thing. The Chinese have got their own institutions.
I agree with you. That's what I was trying to say.
That's why they've got their own like.
No, but that's what I'm saying because it's been normalised. But as Black people,
we're the only ones that don't do it.
Because the system doesn't let us do it.
I don't.
That's the reason why.
I don't disagree with your notion of having schools where I am comfortable to be myself. So growing up in a scenario where the school is predominantly Black would mean that I get to be Anton, and that means I don't have to focus on my race and literally get to focus on my education.
Okay, did you hear what
I agree with that 100%.
Did you hear what Killer Mike said? It says said Black people should not send their children to mixed schools until they're 13, because before you're the age of 13 it kills your confidence being in an environment where you have a minority.
I agree with that. I agree.
When I was in primary school, there were 2 Black people out of, I think there was about 60 children in the 3 forms. There was me and one other.
You automatically pitch yourself at the bottom of the...
Well, not necessarily at the bottom, but you definitely lessen yourself.
You definitely lessen yourself because you just know that, okay, you've got this... Alright, I'm a bright kid. I'm an academic, right? But I've always, like, when I came to England, I did my 6th form in England, right? I found myself automatically putting myself below certain white kids. Just because... I don't know why. And that was the first time that I've been in an environment where I'm a racial minority. Because I grew up in a country where there was one white kid in the school. It was predominantly Black. So then it's almost like it was a shock. It was a culture shock to me.
And he was much older as well.
And I was much older. So imagine our kids now. I'm sending my 5-year-old to school where he's the only Black kid in the class. Yeah. The coolest kids are gonna.
But sorry,
they're gonna be white.
I just feel like it's okay if we're separating ourselves and
everybody else, bear in mind everybody else separates themselves.
I get that, but if we're talking about a system that's set up against Black people globally, systematically, we've been bettering ourselves from day dot. We're the ones that fought every single day from slavery to get to where we are now. So the point is to dismantle the system. It's about mass education, it's mass re-education, so we have to infiltrate the schools from the national curriculum level so that people of all races know that Black history is world history, because Africa is where everything stems from. So essentially everyone needs to know that, and we'll end all of this. If little kids are learning that from dot, it kind of Okay, for example,
I think we have a
The
Mad
British
Mitchell
will
versus
never-
Professor X
no.
argument. Yeah.
The British will never allow anything that
I understand that.
changes.
But can I just say
Tinashe is Magneto.
That changes the narrative.
Separate everyone completely though. How are we going to educate those that won't understand? How are we ever going to?
This is what I'm saying.
If
This
we
exactly.
separate them for good?
Exactly.
If
It
we
has to
if
be
we
a-
made it like.
I think
in a perfect world.
Okay,
hold
but
on.
this is why-
I understand
Paige,
both
let me ask you
sides.
something, right? How do you feel about keeping your children in mainstream education where there's the possibility that they might introduce certain subjects that you don't necessarily agree with? For example,
Don't do it. Don't do it because she doesn't.
No,
read.
don't do it. No.
Don't-
Do it.
Don't
No.
do it.
Anyway, so on this
Don't do it.
episode of Afro
Yeah, yo, trust me, we're not gonna go
No.
there today. However,
yes.
I see both sides, so I get what you mean. So there has to be a two-pronged approach. I understand what Tinashe is saying. If there was a black school where I knew that my child's blackness wasn't going to be taken into account, so he can literally go there, be free, and learn,
and
learn in
the
his
blackness
entirety.
can be
Yeah,
cultivated.
being
to the
cultivated,
point.
and then when he goes into the wider world, he's already a whole person.
Yep,
Yeah, because as you'll find, as you will know, as an ethnic person, you will lessen yourself in those scenarios because you are a minority.
But you know, if you grew up amongst black kids and you're
may
a king
change.
amongst black
Yes,
kids,
it
yeah,
may change
when you
your
go out into
perception.
the world, you don't take
However,
Sorry,
no, because nobody never give my time to speak.
Land.
However, I understand what Paige is saying because at the end of the day, when you come out of that, if we're looking for equality for all, then how are we ever going to pull down that
What is
system?
equality? Do not confuse equality with inclusion.
No, I don't mean inclusion. I don't mean we're including now.
We're not included.
Bro, we are included now.
Economically, we're not.
The same situation.
Sorry, Paige.
Equality, I think, is simple. It's when there's no disproportionate figures for black males, within the criminal justice system. When there's no disproportionate figures for black people in general within the health, education, welfare system. When it comes to economics, when the black people aren't at the bottom of the whole complete system, when it comes to the class system, when it comes to capitalism, that's equality. When there's a proportionate figure of black, mixed, whoever doctors as there is white, then that's equality. When they're hiring and firing an equal amount, when they're putting in prison an equal amount, that's equality.
Okay, so
let
me ask everybody. Let me ask the panel. Are we all privy to the school to prison pipeline?
Yeah.
Okay, and are we all privy to the fact that mainstream education literally brands black children?
Yeah, it's a big word for you every
How
day.
many black kids are on the what do you call that spectrum?
Oh, what was it?
I know what you're talking about.
the autism spectrum.
The
right?
autistic spectrum, yeah.
Right, a lot of black kids are placed on that because, okay, you've got this school where you've got Karen and there's a lot of Karens in school. Our kids are being educated by a lot of Karens. People who would phone...
What is it? It's a statistic. You're 3 times, I think it's 3.2, you're 3.2 or 3 times more likely to be permanently excluded as a black person than you are as a white person.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's a fact.
So
I've seen it
that
firsthand.
is a very big problem.
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand.
If we zoom in on a city like Sheffield, right, in the black community, a lot of
We could do Peterborough if you like.
we can do a lot of cities. Our population is generally or is disproportionately
I know you.
less educated.
Yeah.
And that's because they
didn't finish school.
system is not compatible with black kids.
Yeah.
So, right now I'm speaking, right? If I was speaking like this in front of certain white people, they'd literally be startled, like, why are you shouting?
But that's because.
So he's used to with the lack of understanding.
The lack of understanding, like, the black kid expresses himself differently. We're a lot more animated.
Yes.
Which was shown in that program that I
speak with our
raised
hands a lot.
We speak with our hands a lot, so we start.
I went to
We've
school.
got
Okay, hold on. The school.
The
school.
Pardon?
Say that again.
Oh, I just said that, like, what you're basically saying is that we sometimes have a louder presence about us, and a lot of people like to automatically mistake that for aggression.
Precisely.
And in school, because, for example, one of my children, in fact, all of my children, well, you know who I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about, yeah.
She's had an issue in school where they say she's too loud and destructive or whatsoever. And that's how they literally cultivate that. This is from when she was about 6
They
years
do
old.
it, and in fairness to Tinashe, it is true. I remember in school, I was always viewed that way, but I'm a bit loud. No, hold on. When I was always too. But hold on. Here's when I got suspicious. I got suspicious when my brother, who's much quieter than I am,
got told the same thing.
Got told he's aggressive, he's this, he's that, and I was like, this little.
What school? Where did
he's an NHS nurse right now.
Sheffield.
No, I was in Peterborough.
So I went to school in Manchester. What you were talking about, I didn't experience in school.
Really?
Because Manchester has
it's
such
way more mixed.
You went to Molly Range.
I went to I lived in Molly Range, a school called Chorlton, used to be Oakwood. It's predominantly black.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, so it's mixed. There's all. I grew up with all sorts of people.
So the teachers had to be more.
Yeah, there was none of this like
understanding.
Yeah.
Or normal.
So that pretty much cements my point. that literally cements my point. You're fortunate enough to not have these experiences because you
wasn't predominantly white.
Where you weren't a minority.
No.
So
that's crazy.
What's wrong with saying as black people?
No, I'm not what to do
this. We need to create an environment where our children are a majority.
Yeah. But I think.
And also, it means we have control over the syllabus. We have control over the culture. We have control over ethics, etc. We can dictate how our children are grown. When we're sending our children to these mainstream schools, they're not necessarily getting educated on things
I agree, but I understand
as a mixed race person, you may look at it differently though, because you also have to consider your other side. So I'm guessing
but your other side doesn't protect you from racism.
No, it doesn't. But you also want those people to be educated.
Let me just give you a snippet. I went to a school called St Margaret's Primary School, and it was in Molly Range, close to Moss Side. Every morning in assembly, we used to have steel pans playing.
Wow.
We had steel pans in assembly because our primary school was that mixed, because it's next to Moss Side, everyone's black.
Yeah. Wow.
You can't have anyone single out black kids because all the mums are kicking off. You've got to be extra sensitive in your situation.
That is crazy. Can you imagine growing up? Oh, you would know. You gay. It's me alone, you know. It's me alone.
We've all grown up in majority.
For a little bit.
No, it's fair enough. It's just me and Paige, the only ones.
And then moving to secondary school, it's that mixed where I never heard any racism in school whatsoever. It wasn't until I moved to Sheffield that people told me I was black. I was just Asher in Manchester. No one's calling me a black. I was on the bus with my baby, a newborn baby, and a woman called me a black bitch.
Wow.
And no one said a word, everyone on the bus was white. In Manchester, it's never been happening. Everyone on the bus was kicking off, the bus drivers stopping.
It's a wrap.
That's it. It's done because it's too mixed.
Okay.
We're wrapping this up.
We're wrapping it up, but I just thought of something, right? We have heard of the mixed race experience.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But how about the black experience in terms of our relations with mixed race people?
You saying we've been on one side?
We kind of have.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's do the other side.
Let's speak on the other side now. I mean, obviously, I've spoken on, for example, with mixed race people, I take you as you come. If you identify with me, then we're cool. I look at you as, do you know what I mean? Like, I've been around you, I've known you for years.
Yeah.
You know my standing. Do you know what I mean? I would never. We might have a banter and everything, but deep down, we talk about black issues, and I speak to you as if I'm speaking to Charlene.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Because I draw the line on that.
Mm-hmm.
Land. You pussy put around the subject, man. Right. So wait, are we getting into the fact of what? Are we getting into facts of how the other side of the coin? So it's the mixed race versus the black scenario, and how sometimes we may feel.
Yeah, how we are made to feel by our mixed race, or that based on our experiences. So based on
the dark statements that come around and.
Yeah, all right. So on my experiences, I've been around some mixed race people. For example, Asher, who doesn't make. It's like.
You can't really include
bad, but I don't really include you as mixed race.
That's kind of.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, you're the nearest example.
English is problematic.
Who do you consider as mixed race if it's okay? So you don't consider Asher's. What's your What are you saying?
No, I'm not trying to. Charlene, stop trying to.
What are you saying?
Yo, Tinashe is out here. Right, would you like me to take over, Blood? Would you like me to take over? Right, so basically, so we've looked at, obviously, how mixed race people have potentially felt when black people and white people have both excluded them.
Okay.
But we also, in order to be understanding of all people, we need to understand that black people also have their own gripes with certain mixed race people and certain things that are said.
Yes,
so a lot of I'm gonna go into it. So obviously some of this, I find a lot of this is usually based at the females and not the males. But from what I have witnessed, it's usually she thinks she's nice because she's light skinned and she's got wavy hair, and then she will be like, oh, your hair is top. You know, the whole
it's the same thing again.
It's the whole. We have this. Yeah, it's the whole narrative. But again,
one sec, Paige. Do you remember the was it a meme that you posted?
Oh, don't you put it on the spot like that?
the meme that I commented on.
What was it? What did it say?
It was basically like, there's that whole. I've spoken to black girls that will say, mixed race girls used to kind of
style them.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
And then you had mixed race girls that will tell you that black girls used to say to them, oh yeah, you think you're too nice.
That argument. Yeah. You're right there.
You're
really spoken.
I'm a social
recluse.
I've never had out of the picture.
So I think there's a learning element here that if you're gonna be inclusive, you have to be inclusive all the way around.
Yeah.
Those comments kind of need to stop both ways. So it's not just one way; it's both ways. If you want to be,
it's actually a deep subject because I mean, going back to that, it was like. I remember the end of that meme said, but we're not ready for that conversation. I mean, it took us a while to get to this conversation today.
It has taken a lot of weeks.
And it's taken a lot of deliberation. I personally feel like I have to kind of be careful what I say.
How you say
because sometimes I end up being misconstrued. By people that might feel like, I'm attacking or whatsoever. If I say mixed race privilege, for example, some people might feel like I don't like mixed race people.
And that's not what you say.
It's a very difficult conversation. It's almost like a taboo conversation when you think about it.
Which is
black and mixed race people have never sat down and had that conversation.
It's true.
It's just one of those conversations where. I'll be honest. As black people, there's enough times where I've been around black people and we've said this. Mixed race people are crazy, you know. It's that mixed blood. We've said it.
You know how many guys have said that to me? You mixed crazy. I ain't no more less crazy than any like this. If you just you're an idiot, I would say regardless. It's that microaggression in it, like microaggressive like comments that people don't even know. That's why you said you can't. No, we're not attacking anyone because I'm not even necessarily blaming. Obviously, there are people that are directly, do you know what I mean, overtly racist towards any race, but the majority of us, when it comes to within the mixed and the, do you know what I mean, black community, it's the stuff that we've been almost taught and ingrained that have that against each other that we don't realise. And because we've been so oppressed, it's almost like we want to be like, no, that's not what we're doing. We know what we're doing, but really it is that whole, any kind of culture division with black people, it's that division that they've ingrained within us, and we're just not ready to accept it and open up and say it, and say like, do you know what, this is ridiculous, squash whatever it is between us and let's look at the bigger picture, please. Like, the actual racist, not us. You know what I mean?
I hear that.
It's not a battle between any kind of mix, regardless, like you said. If you're seen as black to society, you may have a little slightly less experience. When you ask like a white person, for instance, you'll get 1 out of 5 white people in the room that have experienced racism. If you ask black and mixed race people, within 5 of them, 4 out of 5.
Okay, but Paige, let me ask you something. As mixed race people, have you come across, or have you in conversation come across other mixed race people that might allude to, for example, the idea that you're mixed race, you're not like them?
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
You don't even, I can tell you that. It's not shit, by the way.
Yeah. So, plenty of times it's happened, but for example, but you know that thing that happened in October with the mixed race when the guy punched me in the face. There was the mixed race guys who this white guy called me a nigger bitch and then punched me in the face. And before he punched me in the face, the mixed race guys were saying you shouldn't be annoyed that he's calling you a nigger because you're not black.
Oh, that whole argument.
And was kind of like, me and my friend were the two that were heated about the whole situation, and everyone around us was looking at us like, what are you bothered about? You're not even black to be even offended by that word. And the mixed race guys that were with us just kind of, they filmed it and didn't say nothing.
Crazy.
And I just assumed that everyone
on the same page.
Yeah, I thought everyone was on the same page.
And this is the thing.
And we're not
It's
all on the
almost
same
like there's that
page.
frustration where you as a mixed race person, you've got other mixed race people that are not on the same page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me as a black person, I've got other mixed race people that I view as black, because when you come to, as a mixed race person, if I see you and I see that naturally, as long as you're mixed race, I just automatically identify with you until you
show me differently.
You show me differently.
What you're
so
on.
it's like if you come to me and you say anything, we can have that discussion. You're in a very state like mixed race people. One thing that mixed race people know for sure is amongst black people,
they are seen.
You are in a safe place.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can be.
Yeah. And that's
mixed
why
race people can be mixed race. Like they.
But I'm not gonna lie. I'm not always felt there was. I'm not obviously gonna say.
I was gonna.
When I first broke into, let's say, the black scene of Peterborough, there was someone. When I say her actual words were right, just because your boyfriend is a black boy that's in our clique, don't mean that you're in our clique. You coconut. So I'm like.
Okay, alright, sorry, I don't mean to pause you, but can we go into this black girl and mixed race girl?
See, it's the girl, that's what I said, it's more the girls than the issue.
Yeah, because there seems to be an issue with black girls and mixed race girls. There's a lot, you see what you're saying? I've heard it from a lot of black girls. And vice versa. I've heard from black girls, mixed race girls.
See, I'm a lighty, that's the difference of me though.
Say that again.
The only difference of me, I've never been called a lighty. Like, when you see me, especially because my hair's straight, this is the first time in like 2 years my hair's been straight. My hair's normally big curly. I'm very dark skinned. No one ever thinks my mum's white. A lot of people think I'm either mixed Indian and black, or just 3/4. No one ever, like, I've never in my life been. The more time people think I'm Somalian, like whenever anyone sees me, they think I've had man in carnival like, yo, pretty Somalian girl, and I'm like, well, first of all, like, why does it be pretty? Like, do you know what I mean? Just call me pretty girl in general. Like, why are you? But regardless. But I've never been seen as a lighty. So me as a mixed race person, I've never almost had that privilege. I've seen as, do you know what I mean? To be like, oh, you black girl, that I know black girls have suffered due to, but I think that's a generational thing. I do think it stems, do you know what I'm saying, with this whole, like I said, social media influence as well. We have to understand and realise that our generation, these 13, 14-year-old girls, you know, are wearing £50 foundation. I was wearing my mum's white foundation when I was growing up. Because I had no money, I couldn't afford no foundation. I was wearing glitter on my eyes. These girls are wearing brand new jeans, like Air Force Ones, like it's all, and it's lighty. Like you said earlier, Tinashe, within the media industry, if you look at the female rappers, like even the black female sexy singers, even if they are full black, they're all still light-skinned women, which creates then this weird like persona, do you know what I mean, that some light-skinned women do have within this generation that we're sexier than you.
Okay, so I have been in the room, since we're talking the other way around, and I have had cousins that literally said that they were better than me just because they were mixed race.
That's what I'm saying.
Literally show you the same thing.
Yeah, that was a guy. That was a guy that told me that. But honestly, as a man, but I think it's different for guys. So he told me that, but as a man, it was much easier for me to deflect it because I'm a big black guy. So he's like, well, you're not. You know what I mean? Like, you're not out blacking me in this scenario. As a woman in that scenario, it's very different. So I almost feel sorry if if I'd have been a black girl in that scenario and my cousin had been a black girl, I may have not been able to deflect it in the way that I could have, and it may have had a bigger impact on me, especially when I seen, rightly or wrongly, whatever you want to say. Going up through school in my generations, the light-skinned girls generally tend to get more attention, and because of that, you're almost reinforcing what I'm already seeing, and that's gonna have a impact on my self-esteem.
Alright. Do you think mixed race girls, knowing their privilege, and do you think mixed race girls use their privilege against black girls?
That's a very general statement.
No. Alright. Let me reword it. Right. Let me reword it.
Sorry, ready to Nashe from.
Do you think that? Alright. We're speaking in general terms.
Yeah.
But alright. Let's be careful. Right. Do you think that? Because when black girls speak of them, some black girls speak of their experiences with mixed race girls, they tend to allude to the idea that
they got styled.
Yeah, they got styled, and it's literally mixed race girls have been idealized in media and on the playground in school.
But can I just say that's pretty culture though? That's pretty culture. Because can I just say that is not for every, like I said, that's a specific type of person as well. That's why it gets.
But generally, no. Generally, in the black community, not for the man them would rather a brownie. Brownies have always been they are the cream. Yeah, they're the cream.
I just think there's an unconscious bias that goes on because of colorism that is rooted at the basis of everything, media, everything else. So, for example, my daughter is black. She's dark skinned. She's had experiences where another black mum, who I perceive to be black, who has a daughter that's fairer than mine, had said to my face that the reason my daughter was leaving her out with another girl who also happened to be the same complexion as my daughter was because that's what dark skinned girls do.
Wow.
And she said this to my face about my daughter.
Wow.
And I thought she was.
Don't get emotional.
We was on the same page.
Look at his face.
Instead of it being about kids being kids and making friends and doing what they were doing, another black parent made it about colour to her light skin. The daughter is lighter than herself.
Yeah, but.
So then she's put her daughter on a pedestal now in society where if anything happens to her now by a dark skinned girl, it's because she's so light and she's pretty and that's what dark skinned girls do. And I was confused by that whole scenario. And that.
See, it's hard for me. I'm bringing up like a dark skinned child.
Yep.
Like Jaden, he's 3/4 black. Do you know he's
you don't look it. Let's be honest.
My youngest, he's very light complexion.
Yeah.
So I'm now dealing with the battle. I'm sort of in between, but I've got the situation that faces me now is that I'm bringing up a dark skinned child and a light skinned child.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
It's almost like a test to see like how society will treat them. Do you see what I'm saying? It's almost like I will now see from my own personal perspective of how society treats each different child, and it's so sad because Kara's only, my youngest is 17 months old. There's already been a difference. When Jaden was less than 1 year old, an old white man, like he must have been in his 80s, come up to me in one of the College Arms pubs and said, "Oh, he's pretty for a little Negro boy."
Wow.
Why do they do it? You know, let's go left. Yeah. You could have just left me out. I didn't need the compliment. Same.
I'm so glad you touched on that because I've got.
Yeah, you got a variety of colours.
Alright. So my last two kids.
Yeah.
They have a very different in complexion.
Yeah.
And you'll get foolishness like, mum will get asked like,
and your brother and sister,
have they got different dads? Because they're very like, and
even if you look good, you can.
The darker one is very much aware of.
Colorism.
The colorism. Yeah. She's very much aware of.
It's gonna affect her more because she's a girl. Anyway.
It affects. I know that it affects her because, for example, she's got a mixed race friend. Yeah. Her best friend is mixed race.
Oh Lord.
And she's come to me and said to me, "Daddy, do you know what I mean? In school, the dinner lady treated me differently to how she treated me."
Yeah, because your daughter's dark skin as well.
Yeah, she's very dark. And my son.
Yeah, it's very light.
It's very light. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is. Just to say to your page, it is a challenge. It is quite a challenge because I feel like the darker child will always feel and see the privilege that the lighter child gets. Yeah. So you could be out with your kids and in town, and you realise that your lighter child will get more attention than the darker child.
Yeah.
And you'll almost, I hope you don't have this experience, but you might get some people literally say, is that your child? The darker one. Almost like, is that not your child? Is that, them kind of things do happen to people. So
they do that 100%, and it's the saddest fact of the matter is I think you just got to teach your children how to handle it, because one thing that I never got taught was how to be comfortable with my blackness and to be aware of certain situations that may arise due to my blackness when it comes to confrontation and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because even if I was a sensitive soul or not a sensitive soul, the only reason I am how I am now is because I've had to sort of fight my way through it. Do you know what I mean? And fight my way through the abuse in school and stuff. But I feel like as long as the kids know now, like I said, it's almost like they are, with the generations that grow, they are getting a lot more weight because there's parents like us that are installing it within our children. That, do you know what I mean, light skin or dark skin. That's why I do think eventually that will just completely collapse, because like I said, look at us, we've both got children, one light skin, one dark skin, do you know what I mean, on different spectrums of it, but on the black scale, and that's the most important thing. And as long as they've got parents, I feel like that install that within them and give them the education and understand that together, we're strong, divided, we're gonna fall, we always will be at the bottom. I think that's what's really important.
But that's a wrap. That is a wrap. Yo, she smacked it. Yo, I want to give a really special thanks to our special guest today. She's hit me with some knowledge, some stuff I didn't know today. You know what? I learned some new. Let me go on.
So I talk so much.
No, you don't talk. You talk so much, but you don't talk too much. Right. Let me be honest. Right. You know my issues. I'm outspoken. And I've had some friction. You know, I've been misconstrued and I chat too much. It's one of the reasons why I put this agenda on the table to say, yo, let's have a discussion. We didn't want to have this discussion without a fair representation from, you know, and I hope that we've kind of, I mean, it's 3-2 in terms of.
But there's only 5 of us, so it's always going to be.
So I hope that we've had a balanced. In fact, I
think it's I think we may have overbalanced it.
We may have, but nevertheless, I'm glad that we had this conversation, and I'm glad that I've been able to speak to yourself, and I'm glad that I've been able to hear from you, Paige, because you showed me things from and this is the thing. I'm an empath. I like to hear from the other side. I like to listen to the other perspective. I can talk to a KKK member. I can talk to Tommy Robinson. I'd love to sit down with Tommy Robinson and really have.
I'm exactly. I've said exactly.
Do you know, have a good reason with them. Do you not understand them, because we can't. The problem, we live in a society where
there's no open
we shy away from open dialogue. Do you know what I mean? Some of the greatest journalists had to go speak to the KKK.
Tough interviews.
They had to go have those tough interviews and say, all right, then tell me why you hate black people. Tell me why you think black people don't like mixed race people. Tell me why you think mixed race people don't like black people. Why can't we have these conversations in a safe place? And
you can never understand and want to change something if you don't, you know what I mean, fully understand the reasons why the person feels that way.
Why the person feels that way, in the first place. So tell me about your experience. Tell me how, because a lot of times, I'll tell you the truth, there's a lot of times when I've seen mixed race people post to say, we've been kind of dealt dirty by black people. And I literally kind of what are you talking about? How can black people be racist and this? How can black people make mixed race people feel away when mixed race people are just like us? Because I'm going by my perception that mixed race people are just black like me. But I don't see how you're meant to feel by other black people. I don't see how.
Or by other white people.
Or by other white people. I don't understand how your experience is different to my experience, because I see you as black.
And you don't have.
So when we're asking the question, is the mixed race experience more complicated? Now that we've had this conversation, I understand that. It's a bit like, okay then.
What do I do here?
I'm at the cookout today.
Now I'm gonna give.
Do you know what I mean? And then
tomorrow, whatever it is,
Do you know what I mean? I can't. Do you know what I mean?
I can't be saying this and playing.
Okay, for example, the whole BLM thing. I'm mixed race. I've got white family and I've got black family. How are the different sides gonna feel when I post this very pro-black post?
Like,
as a black person, I never really put myself in that position to actually think to myself, well, how do mixed race people navigate these situations? Do you know what I mean?
So, or even the fact to think a mixed race person might have racist white families. I've had family of mine that have posted like slurs against George Floyd, being like he's a criminal, and I'm like,
that's not the point.
You're meant to be my uncle.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have. That's my point. We know we have it. That's the only time we are privileged against a mixed race person. Because it's a big thing. Like I can go. Like I spoke to my mum the other day, and I had a 3-hour rant, and my mum was on the call, my uncle was on the call, and about systemic issues that affect the black community. And I can speak freely. I'm not watching what I say whatsoever. And I felt better after I had the conversation mentally. Now, if you are, if you have a mixed family, then you don't necessarily get to fire off like that.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, and that's a big deal.
There's no soundboards.
Especially when you're fighting for equality. Like, we're not even asking, we're not asking to take yourself away, we're just fighting for equality. And my uncle can't understand that because he's saying I'm not being racist.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Exactly. Why you always racist?
It's peak. Cheers, Unc.
And trust me, there's nothing worse than, you know, when you're genuinely speaking from your place and then you end up being misconstrued and labelled as hateful.
Yo, Paige is a troublemaker.
I'm trying to hit him with the heart. Like, whenever it comes to anything, like what I'll try and do to people to try and understand racism, I'll either give you statistics if you want to, like, you know, if you're from that place, or if not, I will tell you a story of where I've cried because a random white man chased me with his car chat and I'll hit you, nigga. Like, I want you to feel that emotion. Do you know what I mean? You've got to hit people either in the head or the heart. Like, that's the only way you can get to people nowadays. But a lot of people, dumb people, just don't want to hear that. Like, the amount of abuse that I've had, people going, get back to your hut, you're a cannibal, like, it's mad. I've had threats and everything.
You gotta laugh.
Like, it's been crazy.
It's good to hear it from the other perspective, and I'm very thankful. I mean, we're very grateful for your time, Paige.
Paige's got to come back.
Thanks for having me.
And
come back.
I think
anytime.
We've already muttered amongst each other to say it would be good to have you back. And I mean, definitely, it's been very insightful, and to appreciate the way you've kind of articulated yourself and. I mean, we've had moments of disagreement.
But it's been okay.
But it almost didn't feel like we were disagreeing. So
I've still been loving the room, so that's the most important thing. So it's fine. That's the most important.
So we are very thankful, right? Let me just stop. All right.
That was nice.
There you go.
Come to an end. This was amazing.
Good night. Good evening.
Good night. See, stopping the recording.